The Maiden Poverty, a Polish folk tale. There was once a farmer and his wife and their young daughter, and the family was terrorised by a cruel and greedy landlord. They were forced to work every hour of the day and still never had enough money to make ends meet. But despite all this, their house was always filled with joy and the music of laughter. As the years went on, the young girl grew into a beautiful, kind and compassionate young woman. And the landlord noticed this. Or at least, he noticed the beautiful part. And one day, he came to the farmer and he said, "I could give you all the money you could ever desire. Your family would be comfortable for the rest of their lives. This I will give you, and so much more, if you let me have your daughter's hand in marriage." Now the farmer, he was tempted. Enough money to keep his family content and able to live in peace and comfort. He talked to his daughter about the proposition, and he saw the light leave her eyes at the mere suggestion of marriage to that man. And he thought of the woman his daughter had become, kind, wise. He knew that she would never be happy with a man like that. And so he went back to the landlord. "My daughter does not love you. My daughter will never love you. You cannot have her hand in marriage." The landlord smiled, a big crocodile smile, and he turned and walked away. The next few weeks were torture. The landlord forced the family to work not only every hour of the day, but many hours into the night. They were all exhausted, bones aching. And eventually, the landlord came back to speak to the farmer. "I can make this all go away, you know. You know what I want. Will you give it to me?" The farmer straightened his aching back as much as he could, and he looked the landlord directly in the eye, and he said, "My daughter does not love you. My daughter will never love you. You cannot have her hand in marriage." And again, the landlord turned silently and walked away. The torture continued, and the family knew that if this carried on for much longer, well, they were going to die. And so, late one night, when the darkness was at its deepest, they started to pack their meagre possessions in secret in order to run away, far away, anywhere they could get to that wasn't there. After they'd finished packing their things, the farmer's wife reached her hand towards the doorknob, and she was just about to turn it when there was a sound. A scratching sound. Quiet at first, like someone running their fingernails down the walls. But the sound got louder, and the sound got fiercer, until it was as though claws of steel were wrenching themselves down the side of the house. The family turned, and out of the fireplace stepped a woman. A woman with long, spindly limbs and white, pallid skin and lank, long hair. She started to walk towards them, and with every step it looked as though her fragile bones were going to break with the impact. It's the devil," cried the farmer's daughter. It must be the devil." The woman smiled a mirthless smile. "I'm not the devil," she said. "But I am your poverty. Wherever you go, I will follow." The farmer's heart started to burn with rage on hearing this, on knowing that this thing, this creature was going to track them wherever they went and make their lives miserable. His hands were itching to wrap themselves around the creature's throat just to end this nightmare. But he looked at the pale, fragile figure in front of him, and he knew he could never hurt a creature such as that. But she had to go away. They had to get rid of her somehow. His mind started to think and think of solutions until he came upon it. He turned to the woman and he said, "My lady, if you are to go with us, will you help us move some of our things? That way we can be on our way quicker." The woman consented, and so he took her out into the dark, into the backyard. And there lay a long block of wood. The farmer took up an axe and he drove it into the wood block, making a small gap. "My lady, if you please put one of your fingers on either side of this axe blade, just so I can mark out where is the best place to hold it up, to lift it, and we can carry it off and be on our way." The lady put her long, spindly fingers into the crack created by the axe. And this was the farmer's moment. He wrenched the axe out of the wood, trapping the lady's spindle fingers in the gap. The creature screamed. Her screams and wails echoed throughout the night. But the farmer didn't listen to them, and neither did his family, as they finished up collecting their things and they started to walk. They walked and walked for hours until they couldn't walk anymore, and then they slept where they fell. And then as the sun started to rise over the horizon, they started to walk again. Eventually, they came to a village where life was a little bit slower and life was a little bit kinder. And they were welcomed with open arms. After a few years, the family had earned enough to live a comfortable life, and the joy and the laughter that had been cruelly snatched from them rang out again in their small house. But what of the landlord? Of course, when he heard that his tenants had disappeared in the middle of the night, he was furious, and he was determined to bring them back wherever they went. He started off at their house, seeing if he could find any clues of their departure and where they were headed. But when he walked towards the house, he heard a wailing sound. It was the sobbing of a woman who sounded as though her heart was breaking. And for the first time in a very long time, the landlord felt pity. He followed the sound towards the backyard, and he saw the maiden trapped in the block of wood and wailing and screaming out into the world. And he helped her. He removed her fingers from the gap so that she was finally free. Not that it helped him much, because now that the maiden Poverty had lost her charges, she attached herself onto the landlord. And no matter what he did or where he went, his steps were stalked by the maiden till the end of his days.